Educator's Edge with me, Lisa Ellum, the Educator's Advocate. This is the podcast where we unpack the art and science of adult learning, share real stories, and explore practical ways to sharpen our skills as teachers, trainers, and coaches of grown-ups. Welcome to this week's podcast. Today we're going to talk about Dharma Doors. Now, I know we talked about Dharma Doors last week with regard to adult learning, but today I really want to talk about the adults who walk through the Dharma Doors and what it is like for them. So welcome back to the Educator's Edge, where we explore what really it means to teach grown-ups well. Today's episode begins with a simple but powerful idea, the one we worked with last week, from Larry Rosenberg, that every moment, especially the difficult ones, can be a Dharma door. That is a doorway to greater awareness, understanding, and personal transformation. Now, when we bring this idea into adult learning, something profound happens because adults don't walk into our classrooms or clinical spaces as blank slates. They arrive with lifetimes, trauma that's been tucked away, experience that has reshaped their brains, their responses, their sense of worth, and their expectations of what is possible. As educators, we're meeting people who have already walked through countless Dharma doors of their own. Some have emerged stronger. Some are still mid-cocoon, quietly rebuilding themselves. And yet, every new learning moment becomes another doorway, an invitation to grow, to stretch, to revise those old stories. So in this episode, we're going to look back at what it means to guide adults through those doors with care. How we can be friendly without pretending the relationship is equal. There is a power imbalance between the teacher and the learner relationship. And how to offer critique without cruelty. And how to create the kind of safety that transforms and doesn't just happen. And this way, the transformation is welcomed. So settle in, because today we're talking about trauma, mindset, courage, and the gentle art of helping adults walk through Dharma doors that lead to lifelong learning. So let's begin. One of the most important things to remember about adults is this: every single one of them has also walked through their own Dharma doors. They've lived, loved, lost, rebuilt, and survived. Many have moved through their own cocoons of trauma, transformation, and identity reshaping. It just happens as we grow into adulthood. Some have emerged as butterflies. Some are still wrestling inside that cocoon, doing the invisible work of becoming, as Michelle Obama quite rightly wrote about. And all of this, the bruises, the resilience, the fixed perception that they carry about who they are or what they're capable of, walks into the learning space with them. So let's talk about trauma and learning, this quiet engine behind behavior. Now, trauma, as you know, doesn't always stay in the past. It reshapes our brain and how our brains predict risk. It responds in our body as the body receives and responds to feedback. It reshapes the learner's self-worth, and their expectations of what is possible. So when an adult learner hesitates, shuts down, pushes back, or overperforms or avoids, they're not being difficult. They're navigating a door they haven't walked through many times before. The work of adult learning isn't to erase trauma. It's to help adults rebuild their self-perception and rediscover the expectation of possibility. I believe the goal in learning is about managing change. It's building change. Carol Dweck tells us that mindset can be fixed or flexible. For adults with long histories, as you know, you don't become an adult until you're 18, but if you're going into learning when you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, or your 50s, we have a long history. And our mindset is shaped not by our schooling, but by our experience, by our failure, by our trauma, by our responsibilities, by our identity, by power, and by culture. So to invite an adult into a growth mindset, as Carol Dweck talks about, it's not a small thing. It requires trust, safety, and a sense of being believed in, a sense of belonging. It requires us educators to walk with the learners as they step through the new Dharma doors onto a new part of their lifelong learning path. And as such, I think it's very important for educators to remember that we are not friends. We are friendly, but we are not friends. And this is a really important distinction to make. The relationship is not a partnership. It is not equal as in a friendship. And this matters because the learners are looking to us for expertise, for safety, for credibility, for structure, and for guidance. We hold the power, not the control, but we hold the power to create an environment where growth feels possible. Our task isn't to be their friend. It's to be friendly enough to build trust and safety, where they can take risks and expose their vulnerabilities. These are simply the conditions required for change to take place. So part of the vulnerability and the trust that a learner might have in an educator has to do with the feedback that we're giving too. We need to be critical in our feedback, but we do not need to be mean, and we do not need to be cruel. Adults need the critique. They crave feedback that helps them grow, that helps them sharpen, to help them evolve. One of the biggest complaints I have when working with adult learners in the workplace is that when they're buddied with a workplace mentor, the mentor will say, "You did great today." So I always encourage the learner to ask two questions. How have I done? How can I do better? There's two questions. So the first one's going to lay, the foundations, for that positive sort of feedback. Oh, you've done really well. Thanks for all your help. How can I improve means that they're actually asking for a critique. They want a structure that will help them grow. And I think that Dharma Door, that critique must be delivered as if it is a Dharma Door. It's something that challenges without crushing. It stretches without shaming. It opens possibility instead of closing it down. The sweet spot in adult learning is that supportive critique. It's not mean, it's not personal, but a thoughtful mirror held up so that the adult learner can see their own identity, but more importantly, their potential more clearly. So what is the learner role in their Dharma Doors? Every week, every class, every new challenge we set becomes a new Dharma Door for our learners. And walking through it with them, not for them, not ahead of them, is the heart of teaching grown-ups well. We invite, we support, we reflect, we critique with kindness. We create the atmosphere where transformation feels safe. We help them rewrite fixed perceptions into flexible ones. We honour the adults as they already are, while opening doors to who they might become. So thank you for joining me on today's podcast. If there's one thing I hope you carry into the week, it's this: that every adult you meet is already in the middle of their own transformation. They've lived through their own Dharma doors long before they ever met you. And when they step into your learning space, they're trusting you with a new one. You don't need to fix their past. You don't need to know their whole story. You simply need to create the kind of atmosphere where change feels safe, possible, and supported. Teaching grown-ups well isn't about having all the answers. It's about walking beside the learners with honesty, with warmth, with clarity and courage. It's about offering critique that opens possibility, not shuts it down. And it's about remembering that learning itself is a sacred doorway, one we walk through together. If this episode resonates with you, share it with another educator or leader who teaches adults. As always, thank you for your work. Thank you for the hearts you hold and the humans you guide on this lifelong learning journey. This is Lisa Ellen signing off. I'll see you next time.